we are joined by Professor Andrew MacLeod. He's joining us from Liberia. Dr. MacLeod is a visiting professor of war studies at King's College in London. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on WION. An interesting visit by Emmanuel Macron, his first visit to China since 2019, accompanied by the EU chief. What do you make of this? Light at the end of the tunnel?
What are we seeing now is the world is moving from the unipolar world after the end of the Cold War, with only the United States mattering, to now a multipolar world in which China is beginning to assert its influence. Certainly China can assert a lot of influence in Russia. Seen recently, China negotiated peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which is probably one of the most significant diplomatic coups that China has pulled off since it started to assert its muscle on the international stage. So we might be able to start seeing a stabilization of the Ukraine conflict. I don't think we're going to see a peace agreement by any stretch. But what this is a very strong warning to the West that China is now going to be heard. And there'll be a question for India, is how does India balance itself in this new multipolar world? Does it go on the side of the West because it's joined the Quad? Does it go on the side of China because it's part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Or does India try to carve out its own third pole? So we might get some sort of stability coming out of Ukraine, or at least a prevention of the nuclear weapons. But this is China really asserting its diplomatic might on the world stage now.
That's very true indeed. I want to ask you about this recent visit by the Taiwanese president to the United States. It's been dubbed as a transit visit by the United States, mostly because perhaps they didn't want to call it an official trip by the Taiwanese leader. Where do you stand on this? Do you think the United States is walking a diplomatic tightrope, or will it ultimately, or is it trying to buy time to ultimately change its policies towards China and Taiwan?
I think a bit of both. I mean, for the last 70 odd years, the United States has had the policy of strategic ambiguity, that is, not being clear on Taiwan, even though on the State Department website you see the statement very clearly. The United States does not support the independence of Taiwan. The United States does support the status quo. But of course, the status quo is very confusing. UN Resolution 2758 in 1971 changed the government of China from Taiwan to Beijing, but did not change the borders of China. So the borders of China that existed immediately before 1971, that included the mainland and Taiwan, still exist today. And the Taiwanese constitution still says in its own constitution that it is the government of all of China, i.e. there is one integral territory. And 58% of people on the island of Taiwan has said that they don't believe the United States policy is in Taiwan's best interest, it's in the United States' best interest. I think what you're seeing starting to evolve, and this is truly scary, a polarization between China and the United States in which Taiwan could be the flint that sparks a major war. But the reason for the war won't be the independence of Taiwan. It will be a cultural clash between the democratic individualist-faced West versus the non-democratic collectivist Asia.